In my last video, I talked about why Marvel Legends might need a reboot, and then I asked you how you would do it. The three main answers were price, which I'm sorry to say is never coming down, articulation, and the third, which I have to overwhelmingly agree with, was accessories. And specifically, interchangeable parts, the accessory that Hasbro and Marvel Legends popularized in 2014 across the industry. I'm Glenn, and this is Super Articulated. So for those of you who weren't collecting Marvel Legends before 2014, you might not know that Legends didn't come with interchangeable heads or hands. That was really introduced in the Infinite series with the Mandroid wave. That's not something that most companies producing action figures did back then. And I'd argue that with Marvel Legends increasing popularity during that time, Hasbro was the one to popularize it. What I love about accessories is that they can drastically increase the value of a figure, at least perceived value of a figure. And in my opinion, if Hasbro wants to get a leg up on the competition, they need to focus on, well, articulation, but also accessories. I mean, the more accessories you have, the more it fills in all that negative space in the packaging. And when you're window shopping, that's eye-catching. That's how powerful accessories are. So it's unfortunate seeing Hasbro make certain decisions that actually burden collectors instead of increasing the value of the figures. When it comes to Spider-Man figures specifically, they're reducing the amount of paired hands that you would think a Spider-Man figure would need. Instead of including multiple pairs of hands, they might include a thwipping hand and a wall-crawling hand separately. And that really limits the choices that collectors have when they're trying to figure out a pose for their shelf. So if Hasbro were to reboot Marvel Legends in 2028, like I suggested, I would like to see them really focus on accessories and interchangeable parts. And I've broken down how they can do that in 4 ways. Number 1. I think if Hasbro really wanted to gain some customer goodwill, they could standardize, guarantee a certain amount of accessories packed in with each figure. And I don't think I'm asking for much when I say 1 additional interchangeable head, 1 additional pair of interchangeable hands, and 1 accessory to represent the character's powers. And for the most part, Hasbro already does this. This just kind of would codify things, I suppose. But I have to use this opportunity to pitch my own marketing idea that I truly believe can replace the Build-A-Figure gimmick. To intrinsically tie 2 characters in a wave together, one of those characters could come with an accessory or interchangeable part that ties into the other figure of the wave. For an example, in a previous video where I drafted a wave of Marvel Legends X-Men figures, I said that Zorn could come with a figure DLC piece for the anchor of the character of the wave, Wolverine, that is based on the artwork of Frank Quietly, tying the 2 figures together and allowing collectors to tell a little bit of a story. Well, Wolverine was the one to kill Zorn, after all. I jokingly call it the correct and erect system, but a lot of you have taken to calling it figure DLC, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I think it's a good name. I truly believe that would increase the value of these figures so much for the collector. And with those standardization of accessories, I feel like another standard needs to be established. Number 2, maximizing accessory value around licensing fees. Here's what I mean. Let's say you have a Punisher figure and he comes with an assortment of guns. Hasbro has to pay a licensing fee every single time they sell one of their figures, right? Every time they make a new tool or a new mold for any of these action figures, technically it's Disney that owns them. When they include a generic accessory like a pistol, they are having to essentially pay licensing fees for that mold. Why then would you want to do that as a company? Wouldn't you include a specific accessory that represents the character in some way, instead of including generic dumbbells like with She-Hulk and barbells with Strong Guy, which I understand is to represent their abilities, which is a good thing, but a little too generic for me. I would rather have additional hands, additional heads, swappable parts in some way that I can't get anywhere else. And I know that is a hot take when it comes to characters like the Punisher who revel in guns, but I'm going to be honest with you, you are going to get better accessories, better guns when you go with a different company selling a generic accessory pack. Kyoto is a perfect example with their amazing Yamaguchi and just Yamaguchi lines. They have generic weapon accessory packs that happen to fit their licensed products. I just know if I were buying a figure of a character like the Punisher, I would rather have alternate expressions, alternate heads, instead of generic guns that I can buy from any other company. And you know, that all sounds very expensive. So, what could Hasbro do to reduce those costs while maintaining the amount of accessories that I'm asking for? Number 3. In 2012, when Hasbro released the Bucky Cap figure, it didn't just standardize ankle pivot in the line, it did a lot more too. It used to be that Marvel Legends had a forearm cut and hands were just on a simple hinge. Well, Hasbro took that hinge, made it a separate piece, and flipped it upside down, so that hands could both rotate and hinge along any point of that rotation. It's a pretty good system, it's very sturdy, but unfortunately the Bucky Cap body was released 2 years before Hasbro decided that they wanted to start including interchangeable heads and hands with their figures, which meant that every single additional pair of hands needed both the hand itself and the hinge, which meant that every single hand needed to be insert molded into that POM plastic hinge. Step 1, cast the hinge. Step 2, wait for it to cool. Step 3, inject the PVC plastic around that mold and make sure that it doesn't stick. That is not an insignificant amount of steps, especially when you're including multiple pairs of heads and hands into every single figure. If Hasbro were to reboot Marvel Legends, I want to see them design around interchangeable parts. And that's pretty similar to what Mattel did with their Masters of the Universe Chronicles figures. I've got He-Man here to demonstrate that his hand pops right off the ball peg, and what they've done is insert molded that hinge within a ball that pegs into the arm. And you would think the wall thickness of this piece of plastic that wraps around the hinge would be incredibly small, and from what I can tell it is, but it also feels surprisingly sturdy. And that just makes it super easy to interchange those hands and also reduces costs. And I think that philosophy of cost reducing accessories can extend to heads as well. So between now, that cut, and right now, I went and saw the Odyssey. And quick thoughts. So I'm technically a professional editor. If you're over the age of 65 and still watch broadcast television for whatever reason, there's a decent chance you have seen my edits. This movie was extremely cutty. About 3 times as many cuts as needed, at least in dialogue sections, and it felt like the movie was just going at a constant pace because of it. There was no reprieve. And maybe that's, I don't know, thematically relevant, but the parts in the movie that you think of when you think of the Odyssey were good. So, recommend. I just ate a bunch of popcorn too, so it might be a little mouth soundsy. I apologize. So a couple years after they started introducing interchangeable heads, interchangeable hands, at some point it was a slow transition, but they started making actual heads and hair into 2 separate pieces so that they didn't keep having to use deco to actually detail that hair. And somewhat recently, with that Medusa figure that was in those Inhumans 2-packs, they used, I think, for the first time, a faceplate. I think if they wanted to include more accessories in box without having to minorly increase the weight of the packaging itself or the amount of plastic used, they could transition over to faceplates. And to hide the transition in that faceplate, I would say they could take it from just above the hairline, behind the ears, and down the jaw. And then with those separate head and hair pieces, hide the seam line once it's all put together. For a single body, you could have one universal buck for the head that would keep proportions in check, different hairstyle, and different faces for every figure. So that's another example of designing for interchangeability. Number 4. Another aspect of designing for interchangeable parts that I can think of, it's essentially trying to make as many parts of the figure as possible into swappable parts. What do I mean by that? Not just hands, not just heads, but feet, but legs, but arms, but torsos. Kind of a similar gimmick to those superhero mashers. I forget exactly what they were called. That way, not only can you increase the variety in that collect and connect piece that I mentioned earlier, but creating essentially accessory packs, but not in the traditional sense. Think Jada's new Invincible line. The San Diego Comic-Con exclusive is a Mark Grayson in his blue suit from season 3, but it's battle damaged. Hopefully Jada has engineered those figures in a way where the limbs are, it's somewhat removable, so that we can interchange those pieces between that San Diego Comic-Con battle damaged look and swap it on to the standard edition that's coming out in November. And making all of these parts swappable can turn a character that you might not initially want to buy basically into an accessory pack. Naturally, making individual parts, making limbs swappable, interchangeable, means that it opens up a new category of swappable parts, of accessories that Hasbro can start including with their figures. Number 5, yes, I miscounted. When Hasbro announced the Lockjaw figure, another Inhuman, it might have even been Dwight who described the process of designing Lockjaw's legs and how difficult it was to achieve the range of motion that would have been necessary for Lockjaw to sit. So instead, they included pre-posed interchangeable limbs that allowed Lockjaw over there to sit. Arguably, since they're only really ever going to do Lockjaw once, and for the price that they were charging, they should have included those articulated legs anyway, but this is not a review. But this new category of interchangeable part could follow that philosophy, pick up where regular articulation can't quite get the range of motion. So for some examples, a really deep crouch for Spider-Man, or maybe crossed arms for a character like Wolverine, similar to how SH Figuarts does for various figures, but I'm specifically thinking of Dragon Ball Z Vegeta. Or you could do even something slightly more complicated. Take the Hulk, for example. We've had so many Hulks that can't cross their arms in front of the medial line into a thunderclap. What if you included interchangeable shoulders that would allow the arms to plug in and cross in front of the medial line? Those are examples of accessories that can overcome the limitations of articulation in fun and interesting ways. And they are still accessories that require that Marvel license. And if you think of any other pre-posed limb ideas, let me know in the comments. That could be interesting. Nobody say anything about genitals. All this to say, accessories, interchangeable parts are a huge part of the identity of Marvel Legends. Unfortunately for Hasbro, they designed the figure that they would base the entirety of their line on 2 years before they made that decision, accidentally making all of those interchangeable heads and hands more expensive than they necessarily needed to be. But with a reboot, with a change in design, that would allow them to go back to the drawing board, and instead of cost reducing the amount of accessories, cost reducing the accessories themselves without reducing usability and playability. In fact, potentially increasing it if you follow that collect and connect gimmick that I have pitched 3 or 4 times now. Design your figures around interchangeable parts. Design your figures around interchangeable limbs. Design your figure around overlays that can be swapped onto other characters, other figures, and you give consumers so much more value without actually increasing your costs. Thank you for watching. In the comments, let me know some of your favorite interchangeable parts, whether it's a specific part or a genre of parts, and whether you have any potential ideas for new interchangeable parts or any type of accessory. I have some YouTube advice for you as a YouTube enjoyer myself. If you really truly want to help your favorite creators, subscribing genuinely does help them. If subscribers in the analytics are shown to be watching more and more of your videos, then YouTube pushes out that video to more and more people, increasing its reach, and that truly benefits the creator. So if you liked this video, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, consider subscribing. I'm not actually sure how liking the video increases its reach, but I think it does, so if you liked the video, click like. And another thing that is massively, massively helpful for your favorite creators and for your favorite videos, for the first 48 hours, if you're on mobile and you swipe left on the comments, there's an option to hype the video. YouTube gives you a certain amount of points per week that you can dedicate to your favorite videos. That genuinely increases the reach in the algorithm for that video the more and more people hype it. So if you have any hype points left, I would appreciate if you hyped this video. It genuinely helps. But thank you for watching. I'm Glenn, and this is Super Articulated. 2 days ago, I sat down here for like 3 hours and recorded a video speculating on the DC collector line and what the articulation might be. The hard drive got corrupted somehow and I lost all of the footage. So I had to sit down here today and shoot something interesting. Oh shit, my wife's calling.